Okay, everyone, this is Hilary Stoupa. It's 8:05 a.m. and I'm going to go ahead and get started here. We are recording this so that we can post it up to YouTube later for those of you who might be having audio problems. Today we're going to talk about complex filtering in tables with XPath formulas, and we are going to cover just some XPath basics to begin with, simply because I did those not that long ago, back in February, so if you attended that session, some of this might be a little bit of a recap, but it just seems like, to me, when we're talking about XPath, it's always good to start at the basics, because XPath is one of those topics that can be a little complex for people. So, as Marcy's been saying here in chat, we do require that you use the webinar audio. And again, if you're not hearing things, it's because probably your audio is not set up right, and we'll have this posted up on YouTube later, so you can just watch it then. Our basic goals are just to try to make things relevant, timely. We're not going to spend a ton of time here. I'll try to be done by 8:30. I tend to go a little over. The for real part, I think, is just to give me a CYA in case I mess up the demo, which does often happen. And if you're interested in some samples, you can get us your contact information, and Marcy will be sure to get those out to you. So first off, what is XPath? It's a query language for selecting nodes from XML. So any of you who have ever dealt with a database at all, like Access or SQL, probably have written some queries against that data. I like to think of XPath as the way I can write a query against XML data, because after all, data is data. And XPath is my way of telling InfoPath or any other XML-based application how to give me the data I need. For me, at least, I get additional clarity when I think of it that way, when I think in terms of what do I need to tell this tool to get back the correct information. And I have a couple of little tools outside of InfoPath that I sometimes use for this that I'm going to show you. You can also use it for functions and formulas, like if you've ever written a concat formula in InfoPath, that's XPath. And InfoPath uses XPath 1.0. So if you are searching online for a particular XSLT solution, or because you're doing some more complex things, do keep in mind that the functions available to you in InfoPath are those of XPath 1.0. So don't get too excited about the 2.0 stuff, because it's not available to you in InfoPath. Relative versus absolute XPath. This can be very confusing for people. We are looking at repeating tables today. In I think every case of the demos I'm showing you, we're going to be using relative XPath. Most of the time, InfoPath gets it right when it's helping you with these XPaths when you're using the formula editor. Sometimes InfoPath gets it wrong, so it's important that you know the difference between a relative and an absolute XPath, and that you're able to think through when you need what, okay? The relative XPath usually looks like, you know, ... // moving you back up the tree. The absolute XPath usually starts at the root node, and in an InfoPath formula, a lot of times it includes xdocument get DOM in the formula. We'll look at a couple of formulas in the formula editor and give you a chance to kind of see those differences. So relative means relative to the node I'm on. We're going to talk a little bit about how you know what node you're on, because that can change depending on whether you're looking at a control or whether you're looking at a field. And so relative means relative to where I'm at currently in the tree. Absolute means starting at the beginning of this document, please help me find blah, blah, blah. Okay? So to look at a relative XPath, given this basic schema, if you put a rule on field 1 that refers to field 2, the relative XPath is ... // So I'm at field 1. ... / takes me up the tree to my fields. And then my field 2 takes me back down to field 2. So I'm helpfully making hand gestures here that I'm sure is very useful. But I honestly, when I'm doing these things and I look at these myself, I think, I'm at field 1, boom, boom, up the tree to my fields, and then back down the tree to field 2. And so I find it very helpful to just think in terms of I need to go from where I'm at up however many levels it takes me to get back to the field that I want. And you may find that sort of thing is helpful for you as you talk through these yourself. So given this schema where we're on section name, if we place a rule on section name that refers to section percentage complete, the relative XPath would be ... so up the tree to sections, and then back to my section percentage complete, because that's a child of sections. So what would the relative path be to rating test, which is a child of the root node, right? And we need to go up the tree once to sections, up the tree twice to audit, up the tree 3 times to my fields, and then we can select rating test. Okay, hopefully this is making sense. The absolute XPath is pretty easy to get if you just right-click the node and select Copy XPath if you need the full XPath. So if we take the following schema and we have these 2 different default values, which are ridiculously hard to read, I'm afraid. The first one is a sum formula that uses the absolute XPath to the question rating. Okay. The second formula is a sum formula that uses a relative path from the total field to the question rating. And the result of the default value in the first formula box is the sum of all instances of question rating. That's because we're using an absolute path. So it doesn't matter that we're on the total field. We're using an absolute path which says, please summarize everything for question rating. The second one is going to give us just that questions nodes instance of question rating. So 1 in this case. It would give me just that question rating. Now, if you were to be creating this formula from the InfoPath formula editor, and you had selected, you're here on total field, and you had selected question rating using insert field or group, InfoPath would have given you the formula on the right. InfoPath is going to assume you want a relative path, that you want only the information that's in the same questions node as you are currently in. However, you may in fact have wanted, I guess for whatever reason, the total of all question ratings in that field. Obviously, schema-wise, I would probably question that decision. But regardless, let's just pretend. And if that were the case, then you would have wanted to use the absolute XPath. And in this instance, you would have been able to just copy that XPath from the data source task name and paste it in. So how do we learn these things? How are we going to learn XPath? How do we learn the right ways to figure these formulas out? One thing you can do is you can leverage InfoPath itself. And I did a little blog post on this that maybe you'll find helpful. And the reason I suggest leveraging InfoPath is it does give you the ability to change, like when you're typing a condition, you can change the first drop-down box to the expression, and then you can see the full XPath there. It may not be the right XPath you need, so you could change it if you needed to, but it also will give you an idea of what InfoPath is using. Next, you can use the Edit XPath checkbox in the formula editor to show the XPath InfoPath is using. Again, if you're not getting the results you want with your XPath, then InfoPath may or may not be of great help to you while you're trying to experiment. But you can do some sort of things like try some expression boxes to see what's going on and so forth. Here's a list of some online resources, and one of them is, again, a link to my blog. I've got a list of resources there that include 2 of these. And then these 2 bottom ones I just ran across yesterday, and I want to show them to you as we do the demo. So finally, what we're going to demo is hiding a previous selection and a repeating drop-down. And there's a couple of posts here. When you get the slides, you'll be able to check those out. We're going to look at setting one row of a repeating table based on a value. And we're going to look at clearing all data in the form with one button click. This has some caveats. So I'm going to go ahead and share out my desktop. And let me just get this shared. As soon as I see it shared, I will minimize the screen so that you're not just seeing this kind of infinite reflection. There we go, the infinite reflection. Let me just minimize this. And Marcy, I'm assuming you'll pipe up if for some reason I'm not sharing anything. Okay, so what we're going to look at first is hiding preceding selections that were previously selected in a drop-down. Let me just drop this guy down again and ignore it. So I've got this form. He's a little ugly. And over here on one of my pages, I have this drop-down list. Now this drop-down list is set to not show anything that's been previously selected. This drop-down list is one of my attempts at setting this up that failed. So I wanted to show you what one that doesn't work looks like so we can talk about the differences between those two XPaths. So I'm going to go ahead and preview this. I need to preview it from view 1 because I have to query the data source that I'm using here. Let me find the preview button. I hope I am not the only person that is still struggling a little bit with InfoPath 2010 ribbon. I'm still looking for stuff. It's kind of like Excel. I was looking for stuff in Excel for the longest time when they switched to the ribbon. So we're going to ignore this view for now, and let's go over here and look at this view. So I have these two drop-down lists, and they're both bound to the same field, and they both have the same data source behind them. And so I've selected, did the topics make you want to find out blah, blah, blah. You can see in my second drop-down list here, I've got the question number, not the actual question text, because that's the value I'm storing. And what do we know when we see the value instead of the display? We know that there is something wrong with our drop-down list filtering. And so, as you can see, now I've just got 3 questions. Right? This bottom one, I just have 2 questions. So as I make a selection, other selections are no longer available to me in this top drop-down that's functioning correctly. In this bottom drop-down, where I do not have the filters right, my first one, I don't have any options available to me. That's why all I can see here is the value. If I were to set this back to blank, then we would see that there is nothing available to me there. This one, you can see I've got all 4. This one, again, all 4. Right, so we can completely tell that there's something wrong with the filter that I've got on this drop-down. It's not doing at all what I was hoping for here. So let's go take a look at that in design mode. Pop over here and see what I've done and what I've done wrong. So we look at our correct page. So here's our 2 lists. Well, let's look at the right one first. So we've got our drop-down list, and we've added a filter here. Now, a couple of fascinating things when you're dealing with SharePoint. You'll notice that my expression refers to the title field, and you'll notice that there is no title field here. There's question ID. And you can see when I hover over it, it has in square brackets title. The internal name of that column is title because that's how it started its life. It's been renamed question ID. SharePoint will not change the internal name of a column. So if you initially named the column my special fancy column with a lot of spaces and capitals in it, and then you rename it something reasonable, it's always going to maintain the original name. So in our XPath, we're going to see that I'm referring to title. Now, how would I know whether to use question ID or title? Let's go check our filter here. If I do this, question ID is blank, right? And then I change this to the expression, and this is what I'm saying in my blog post as well, you know, just set up your conditions and then change it to the expressions, just so you can see what InfoPath is doing. We can see what the actual XPath to the field is. From where we're at, which is SharePoint list item RW, the actual XPath to the title field is or the question ID field is D title. If you were to use D question ID, you would never find a node because that's not the actual name of the node. You could find out the actual name using copy XPath as well. Okay, so let's copy this out so you can read the whole thing because this is a miserably tiny box and nobody wants to have to look at that. And let's take a quick look. So what this expression is saying is that I want the items where the case is not that the title is equal to current. What is current in this scenario? Current is the row I'm on over here in my repeating table. Let me scooch this guy a little over. Okay, current in this case refers to this repeating table, which is group 2, because my control that I'm working with is inside of group 2. So current refers to the group that that my control is in, okay? And so I'm saying I want the ones where the title, where it is not the case that the title is equal to the current node, we're on group 2, preceding sibling, my group 2, my field 1. So in other words, I'm saying I want all rows from the secondary data source where it is not the case that the title is equal to any of my preceding instances of field 1. Now I could also have added a rule saying, and it also needs to be not equal to any of the following sibling instances, right? Because sometimes you want, like in the instance where I cleared out, let me just pop back over here to preview. In the instance here where I cleared out this first one, when I click this dropdown, what do you expect to see? I expect to see all 4 questions. And the reason I expect to see all 4 questions is I know that my formula is only working with preceding sibling, right? And indeed, I see all 4 questions. Now, if I had added a following sibling condition as well, right? If I had also added a following sibling, then the only question that would have been available to me here would be the would you recommend attending? No, not that way. Did the topics make you want to find out more? So the only question that would have been available to me in this first one would be the one that had not been selected. So if you want to make sure that you can only select any option one time, then you do want to use preceding as well as following sibling in these formulas, right? You want to go ahead and say, no, none of those. Let's take a quick look. I'm looking at the time. I'm like, I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm sure you've got other things to do, and here I'm going over as usual. So I'll just cancel here. Let's go take a look at the one that does not work, and let's see what I did wrong. And off we go. This one's our broken one. And what did I do wrong here? I'm sure it's something really huge, right? And in fact, it's not. Let's go modify. You can see I've got question ID is not equal to, note that question ID instead of title is not equal to, use a formula, current preceding sibling. Let's look at the XPath here so that we can compare them. And we can look at the one that works versus the one that doesn't work. Okay, and back over here we go. So this stuff, we know it works, right? Here's our broken guy. And of course, the big difference is I used not equals instead of not in parentheses. So it's not that I'm looking for title not equal to this particular field. What I'm looking for is a case where it is false that title is equal to. And it's a little, I don't know, it's obviously a little hard for me to wrap my head around, or it wouldn't have taken me 4 steps to get it right, you know, and I wouldn't have kept up my one that was incorrect, because this is my instinct right here, this item 4 here. This is the way that I'm like always thinking I need to do this, and I'm always wrong. In fact, the way I need to do this is instead check that title equals field 1 is false, is what I really need to do, instead of checking that it's not equal to, and there is a difference there. Okay, I'm going to cancel this guy. We're going to look at this view next, our view 1, and I've still got it open in preview, so we're just going to take a look at that guy. Now I've got here 2 repeating tables. This repeating table has some conditional formatting on it, okay, and the conditional formatting here is using preceding sibling again. And in this case, what we're doing is we're hiding the row if the question text is equal to the current item question text. And again, let's just copy this out and put it someplace where we can see it. Oops, threw a period in. Okay, so in this case, we're checking whether the preceding sibling question text is equal to the current row's question text. Now this time we're not dealing with anything in our main data source. This is bound to our secondary data source. Okay, and I've also got the question table down here as raw data. So let's take a look at our preview again. And let's switch views. Back we go to view 1. So you can see here in our table where we've got the conditional, formatting, that we've got 4 different rows showing. But if we go down here, let me make this guy a little shorter because I'm cutting him off. If we go down here where I've got the raw data displayed, you can see obviously we've got multiple responses, right? And that the same question returns again and again because three different incidences of the survey were filled out. So instead, we're just showing each question text once. Now, given this XPath, which instance of these rows do you think is showing up here, right? Which instance, because there is going to be only one instance of each row is going to show. And let's just close this preview and take a quick look at which one it is. And we've got unique response IDs. So let's pop that over there and let's preview again. So here we are. We've got to select something. We'll just select the same one that we were already looking at so it's not confusing. Okay, so you can see the response ID. Format Painter, that was fun. The response ID in each of these is the same. And so this is actually only displaying the first instance of each one. It's displaying the first instance of each one because our formula is hiding if the preceding sibling is equal. Now, if we were hiding because the following sibling is equal, it would instead be displaying the last instance of each one. And it's just kind of one of those things for you to know because that's something you can leverage in certain cases. There may be a reason why you would want to show only the last instance of something instead of the first instance. A preceding sibling is going to give you the first instance. A following sibling will give you the last instance. Okay? And of course, obviously, you could hide everything if it wasn't, a particular index instead of preceding sibling as well. Finally, in this guy, I'm going to go ahead and close that preview again. Finally, in this guy, the last thing we've got here is we've got this field, which is a calculated value. And in this case, again, we're doing an average formula. And I just wanted to look at the XPath there. So this is a calculated value, which means we are currently on the SharePoint list item node. Okay, we go back up we're not. It's bound to the answer field. So we go back up the tree to the SharePoint list item node, and then we can select the answer where the question text is equal to the current question text. One second, my brain just stopped again. Okay, so in this case, sorry, my bad, I got mixed up again. The current node is the SharePoint list item group, and we've got a current question text that we are comparing to a question text in order to get the answer so that we can get the average. There went my brain for the morning. Okay, so the last form I want to look at is the one that has some rules on it that will allow you to clear all fields. And this is the one where I wanted to show you a couple of different options for online XPath testers. They can be helpful because sometimes you need to know what your XPath is doing, and while we can check things like show the XPath in the expression box, and we can do things like change that first drop down to the expression, sometimes these things aren't as helpful as they could be. They don't give us enough information. So first off, let me show you this rule. There's a rule on this button that sets all of the fields and attributes to blank. Now, the first thing you need to know is that this is not browser compatible. It is not browser compatible because it is using descendant or self. This is, to the best of my knowledge, not documented anywhere that descendant or self is not browser compatible, but I cannot admin approve or sandbox a form that uses this. It doesn't show up in the design checker. In InfoPath 2007, trying to admin a form with a descendant or self statement in it caused me to get an unknown error message, which was really helpful. And you'll see in the slide deck the error that I got when I tried this in SharePoint 2010 said something along the lines of critical error because of the state of the object. And there was a correlation ID, but actually nothing in the log files. So that was super exciting to not be able to get any information on why it was failing. So just so you know, this technique is not browser compatible. Now you're looking at this field and you're saying, how on earth do we have this complex filtered XPath here in this field when all we can pick using the field picker is a regular field? And that's because the form was saved as source files and the manifest was modified. I'm going to go ahead and let's preview this real quick so you can see what it does. So just A, B, C, D, E. Okay, and we click the button and everything gets cleared. Okay, and so basically it's a single rule here that's clearing all the fields based on this particular manifest hack. So let's get out of here and let's go take a look at the source files. If you look at source files very frequently, one option, of course, is to save the form as source files. That's under the publish option in InfoPath 2010. I use 7-zip a lot and just extract the files that way. So I've already extracted these files. And if we go take a look at the manifest here, here is my rule right here. And so you can manually modify your target field for a rule and go ahead and add things like filters and so forth. And in general, I haven't had too many problems with this round tripping. You'll have noticed when we looked at the field in the rule itself, it was all underlined. That's InfoPath's way of letting us know we've got a valid XPath there. If it's not valid, it would have just looked like plain text. Okay, and so now let's go find out. What this will select for us. I have filled out, and I need to do a little cleanup here. I've filled out one of these forms and saved it locally so that I've got the XML. Okay, so that's the first thing you need. If you want to test your XPath in an online XML editor, you need to know what the XML is going to look like. And then the second thing I've done here is you saw here in the manifest that the quotes had been encoded here, which is normal. And I just went ahead and changed those quotes back to regular quotes because I know that the place I'm going to test this is going to not be happy with encoded quotes. So here's my XML. Now this one is xpathtester.com, and it I found did well with one of my tests and failed on the other. So that's why we're going to look at two different testers. And so here is my XPath. We'll talk about what this does in just a second. So here's my XPath. Through this point, all we are doing is selecting everything before the square brace, since I can't select things correctly. Everything through this @ asterisk is selecting all the attributes in this XML. So where's our attributes? My attribute equals A, my attribute 2 equals C, right? And we have another attribute that you can't see in this thing because it's not wrapping text, but you can see here. So what's our other attribute here? It is right here on my fields, and it's the XML language attribute. We don't want to clear that, right? And so that's what this little filter right here is doing. So if we try it just as we've got it, if we test it, we would expect to see A and C, right? That's what we would anticipate seeing because those are my two attributes. And indeed, we've got A and C, okay? And we're going to test this a second time. This guy helpfully clears things and returns results to the same window. There's an option here to output to own window, but we're only going to try one more thing, so we will not experiment much. So now what's going to happen if I remove that filter? We would get the language attributes values, which is like EN-US, I think. We'll get an A and a C. We test this guy, right? We get English US, we get A and C. So this has given us an opportunity to test our XPath before we try it, and it gives us a nice visual output. This one is the one I found when my first one was failing on me, and this is called xmlmaniac.com. And again, we're going to copy and paste in our document input here. So this is our XML that we've got. And the expression we're going to test here is the other half of this. Okay, so we've talked about this one. This one selects all the attributes except for the XML language, right? Our form is made up, our XML is made up of elements and attributes. We need to select all of our elements and attributes and set them to blank. This guy right here, that's the union operator. So this basically means please return all of the elements. Oh, and by the way, also return all of the attributes and set those to blank. Okay, so that's just unioning. So here's the other half of our expression that we're going to look at. This guy is returning all the elements that do not have children. The reason we want to return all the elements that do not have children is so that we're only returning each element one time, and we're not returning things like the root node. Okay, so we're going to run this, and this guy behaves a little bit differently. When we run him, he returns, instead of the field values, he's going to return the selected fields. So in this case, we would expect to return everything that I've highlighted here, field 1, field 2, field 3, field 4. Now it does also return the attribute because that's part of field 1, but it doesn't actually select it. So if we run this, and don't let the namespace freak you out. It's just obviously since the field has a namespace, it's returning it for each one because it's no longer covered up here in the My Fields, which is right here. We can see here's our namespace declaration in My Fields. That's why you don't see it on each node below. Okay, so this returned what we anticipated. Now if we remove this filter, what would we expect to see? If we remove the filter, what's going to happen is it's going to return, our XPath would return My Fields, right, this root node, and then it will also, again, return all of the children. That's why we're excluding anything with children. So let me go ahead and run this. And as you can see down here in our results, I'll scroll down just a little bit, but the first thing we've got is we've got My Fields with all of its children. And then if we scroll down, you can see we've got each field returned on its own as it was before. Okay? And so that's why it has that. That's why this expression is using that not clause, right? Is because we don't want to return the children, because we don't want to return My Fields with all of its children. That's not our goal there. We just want to select all of the individual fields. So that is the way that particular rule set works, and those are a couple of online XPath testers that you can try that can help you figure out your XPath. And I'm going to pop back over to my slides and just see if there's anything there that I promised to cover that I missed, and then we will see if we've got any questions now that I'm back over here. Let me get back to this. Okay, and so, manually modifying the rule target in the manifest, we looked at that. Now, when I say not browser compatible here, I am talking about descendant or self. You can still modify the rule target. I do have a blog post on that. Check my blog. It's from a few years back, but you can still do that, and I've done that before, used preceding sibling and stuff in rules. This guy down here just talks about what these different things do. Gets the nodes without children, gets the attributes except for that final attribute. And then we'll pop down one more slide. I think this is it. You can contact us and we'll get you the samples and so on. Bruce, let me talk to your question. Offering a series of XPath expression training sessions. That's an interesting idea, and that's something I will bring up with Patrick and Marcy. Jimmy Rishi is XPath extraordinaire. He's probably our guy with the greatest XPath skills. I sometimes have to pop up and ask him, hey, Jimmy, what do we do here? learning the basics or doing an XPath basic course, it seems like it might be a really good idea. And so we'll definitely talk to Patrick and Marcy about that and get back to you. One thing that can be problematic is that every form is different, right? Every schema is different. Every need is different. And as you saw when I was showing you the problems I ran into with that drop-down, you do kind of, because of every schema being different, you do kind of have to figure it out fresh almost each time in a lot of ways. But knowing how to walk up the tree and knowing some of the basics is very helpful. And did anybody have any additional questions? If not, we'll wrap up. Oh, sorry, Marcy. So at any rate, Bruce's question, in case I didn't make it clear, was about whether or not we could offer some XPath training. So that was my reply to that. If anybody has any other questions, pop them up. And if not, I hope everybody has a great day. I see somebody's typing, so we'll hang on for one more sec. Okay. Well, I don't see anything else popping up in chat, so I'm going to go ahead and call it. I'm sure everybody's got work to get back to today. Thanks so much for coming, and we'll get this up on the web. We'll get this up on YouTube, and good luck. You know, work hard on that XPath. It'll make everything easier for you in your forms. But don't be surprised if you struggle sometimes with it. It's not easy. It's not intuitive. Every form is a little different. It takes some work. We all have to do things multiple times. We all occasionally are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that finally worked. So I wish everybody the very best, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much for attending.